Hello everybody and welcome back to more Super Robot Wars Original Generations, and we are here for Scenario 16, Starbuck Island, and no, it is not just off the coast of Seattle. Pretty simple and straightforward map here. We have to take down all of the initial enemies as well as shoot down both Thomas and Tenzan, or at least force them to retreat. You definitely though can shoot both of them down, and that's what we're going to try and do on this scenario. As you saw before we started this map, we don't get to choose our deployment position, and you can tell that because Garnet was in the front of this group, so definitely not my first choice, but anyway, not a big deal. On turn 1, you're likely not going to be seeing much combat, so basically what you're going to want to do is get your high movement units out front, and then the rest of your units, especially the ones that aren't good at moving through the water, you should try and load them up onto the Hagane, and then from there you can actually deploy them off the Hagane and into the fray closer to all the enemies. And so I'm going to be loading up basically all of my dispense when I do that. In terms of who's in what mech right now, we've still got Ingram in the Schutzwald with Attune in the Wildbroder, and then for the dispense we've got Ryo in the Type TT instead of Aya. Aya is in one of the generic dispense alongside of Garnet and Ryoto. It's time now to talk about our final recruit on the Ryusei route, Ryoto Hikawa. Ryoto has a lot of things to like about him, but he also has a lot of negatives, making him, in my opinion, one of the biggest problem units in OGS 1. And so there's a lot of little things about Ryoto that make him very interesting, but again, a lot of little things that make him very not good. But we'll get into that in a bit. Let's go over his basics first and then discuss what it all means later. Ryoto's stats are unimpressive, and there's no way of saying it nicely. He has a lot of SP, that's good, but beyond that, his melee stat is pretty meh. His range stat is better of the offensive stats, but it's worse than Ryo's stat, and Ryo is under-leveled in comparison to him when joining. His skill stat's okay, his defense stat isn't exactly stellar. His best stats are probably his evasion and his accuracy, which are both above average considering the rest of your pilots, but it's not like he's the best at any given stat other than having a pretty darn good SP stat as mentioned in comparison to the rest of the units that we have right now. Next up, let's talk about Ryoto's spirit commands. At base, he has focused at an outstanding 10 cost. That means he can spam it as much as he wants once he gets to SP regen. Great for an accuracy evasion based unit like him, gets that 30% increase to both of those stats. Gain at a 10 cost is also really good, getting him double experience. That also applies to both units in a twin if you have Ryoto in a twin. More on that later. He also has Mercy at base at a low 5 cost, which is good. Mercy, as mentioned with Ingram, is very situational. It leaves the enemy with only 10 HP as long as you have better skill than them, so it's useful for keeping an enemy alive if you need to do that, such as taking down a missile, but that you don't want to actually kill. But beyond that, Mercy only is useful for those very specific scenarios, or if you're trying to set up a kill, but most of the time in Super Overwars, enemies will retreat if you leave them at low HP. Coming up very soon at level 20, he will get Bullseye at a nice cost of 15, which is very useful for him. At level 26, he gets Valor at 45, a little on the expensive side, but a great spirit and great that he has it. And then at level 34, he has Zeal. We haven't talked about Zeal in a while. Ryusei, of course, has it. And so again, great spirit, and it has a really great effect. It's high cost though, although his Zeal is pretty cost effective at 40 there. He's definitely very useful, and he can use that to great effect in his special utility that, again, we're going to talk about a little later. The other thing I'm going to talk about with Ryoto that I haven't mentioned at all so far is his Twin Spirit. His Twin Spirit is Soul. Now, it is expensive at 70 cost. However, what Soul does is, and with Twin Spirits in general, you cast it and both units have to use up the 70 SP, and then they will cast that spirit. Both of them will get it, though it only applies if they're still in a twin together. You can't apply it and then untwin them. Anyway, the important part here is what Soul does. Soul gives you a 2.5 boost to your next attack, which is better than Valor, which just gives you a flat double boost to your damage. So that is huge and can get you the best damage available in the game by using Soul. And Soul is a very rare Twin Spirit, so that gives Ryoto a really good, specialty that not a lot of other characters will have. So that's one really nice thing about Ryoto's spirit list. Just in talking about his spirit list in general though, one thing you will notice is that he has no access to Flash or Persist, which isn't great for taking on bosses, though he has Bullseye and Focus, which means he can work in a bunch of different units. But again, we'll talk about that in the overview at the end. Next up, looking at his skills, he's got a pretty solid skill list. Telekinesis at level 3, that's really good, and again fits his more accuracy evasion style very well. He also has support, attack, and defend, which of course is great for helping out other characters, and of course it's a great skill to have. And then finally in his base kit, he has Gunfighter level 2, which is fantastic. That'll level up a few times, and of course Gunfighter is great and will really help his below average range stat as his main attacking stat. Ryoto is also going to be the very first unit that I'm going to majorly talk about personality types with, because he, more than Aya, is him having a bad personality type, in that case being cautious, really hurts his overall utility. So I'm going to paint you a picture here. So you send the Grungist into a group of enemies, and let's say they're just really low level planes that will be easily knocked out by Boost Knuckle. So a majority of the playable cast, they will gain +3 to their will, which Ryoto will as well, from taking out all those enemies. Now that's the flat just from taking out enemies. Now let's imagine another unit. Let's go with Ryo, because that's simpler. Ryo is a super strong unit, and so what she gains from hitting all of those enemies, and not including kills, she will gain +2 from being a super strong unit. She will also gain +2 from taking the damage. That means if she's going up against 4 units, she's going to gain an additional 16 will. On top of that 12 will, that will get her all the way to nearly 130 will, which is a huge benchmark. On the flip side, all Ryoto is going to gain, because all he gains from typical engagements is he only gains +1 from taking damage. The only other main thing he gets from the main 3 there is he gains +1 from evasion, but you can't do both of those in a given battle. So he gets nothing from hitting an enemy, which is one of the best and most consistent ways to gain will. So, in comparison to Ryo, who is nearly at 130 will, Ryoto is only going to gain an additional +4, meaning that he's only going to be at 116 will. That's not close to 120 will, which you'll need for a lot of attacks, including for the Grungist, you need 120 will to use Ketarahu's sword. You're not going to be anywhere near 130 will to activate Predict, Attacker, and Guard, and also he's just going to be behind in damage in general because his will is going to be so much lower than every other unit. And I complain incessantly about Aya not getting kills, but Aya does other things. She can heal with Trust, she can grant Bullseye to other units with Attune, and later she gets Resupply, one of the best spirits in the game. Ryoto has to be twinned to add additional help to other units, and even though Soul is that good, it means that Ryoto is always going to be behind, and if you want him to deal as much damage as possible with Soul and have really high will to use Attacker and stuff like that and use really great attacks, he's always going to be behind, and if he's a secondary unit, he's not going to be gaining as much will as well. So there's just so many things that really struggle with Ryoto as an offensive unit because he just doesn't gain will quickly. So that's the personality type thing, and again, I'm only really mentioning it with Ryoto because he's different because of that. The other thing about Ryoto, and I mentioned it a little bit in his spirits, is that he doesn't have Persist or Flash. So that means that he, like Rai, isn't guaranteed to be able to survive a fight against a boss. A huge deal? No, he's got Focus, so he can help himself stay alive, but again, it's unfortunate and it makes him less viable than some other units that have Persist and Flash, which is pretty much every unit in the game either has Persist or Flash or Wall, so they have some way to make sure that they really take a lot less damage. Ryoto's skill list is really nice, but the problem is that Ryoto is a ranged unit that doesn't have hit and run. I'm not going to do the whole rant again, but it just sets him behind because you're either having to work around that and not be able to use long-range weaponry as effectively as Rai or other hit-and-run users, or you're going to have to immediately get him hit and run, and then he's going to be behind because he's not getting SP regen, which he really needs, or Attacker, or any other ability like Revenge or more Gunfighter, or whatever you want on him, and so that again just puts him behind. So as a unit, especially in the original OG1 where twin spirits don't exist, and twinning in general doesn't exist, Ryoto is a below average, not good unit, and sits in the same tier as somebody like Gyata and other units that just do not do enough as a physical attacker, and especially because he's not a support unit, there just isn't really a point in using him and getting around his awful personality type because his spirits and skills aren't good enough to make up for having a bad personality type, and his stats aren't either. So, Ryoto is not good in OG1. But we're not talking about OG1, we're talking about OGS1. Ryoto has this very, very specific niche that I have not tested out yet, so this could be complete conjecture and could not be true, but Soul is that good of a twin spirit. It is so good because it provides so much more damage to other units. And Ryoto also has two other spirits that are technically twin spirits because you can use them and they apply to both units, and that is Gain and Zeal. Ryoto could be a unit that in theory could just be the ultimate put this guy on another unit to heavily carry. You need to, of course, this has the extra caveat of making sure that Ryoto somehow gets to 110 will quick enough, which either means you're going to spam spirits to make him up there or have him have a part that helps him do that. But beyond that, if you can get him to 110 will and then pair him with whatever your best unit is, because they should, if they have their ace bonus, they get the 105 will at base, and then they'll also get the 5 will bonus for being your top ace, and so you get that all kind, and then they will get to 110 will, they twin the Ryoto up with them, and then bam. Ryoto can provide gain immediately, so then you can continue to snowball with your best unit. He can provide zeal, so that you can use that unit more than you want in any given turn, and that doesn't even take away from that best unit's SP pool. And then finally, if you want that big hard-hitting damage to take out bosses, you got Soul, the best spirit in the game. So with all that being said, there's a lot of benefit to Ryoto, but that is a very hyper-specific thing you gotta do. The other thing is that you probably need to give Ryoto a really good mech to help exemplify his abilities and make it so that his soul damage is good, because even with soul, Ryoto might not be able to out-damage other units that you just twin together and use Valor on both of them. So that's something that you have to do. Ryoto is going to need a super because you're not probably going to be able to get the damage out of him if you're just in a generic robot. Kind of depends on how you play, again, with all that being said. But so you put Ryoto in a super robot and you're going to be using his worst stat, but again, whatever. And so to help deal as much damage as possible with his soul to help prop up that best unit. But again, that's such a hyper-specific thing. Could Ryoto be that good because of those extra bonuses he provides with the zeal and the soul? But that's also endgame, so you have to drag him along as well. The other issue with Ryoto is because he's the last unit you get on Ryusei route, you're not going to be giving him a lot of favoritism. I mean, you could, especially if you're getting him boss kills, but the other thing is that there's just, again, so many mouths to feed. Are you really going to be giving Ryoto a lot of extra kills over Ryusei, over Rai, over Latuni, over over Ingram, who you definitely should not be giving him more kills? And so that's just, again, a problem that Ryoto is always a step behind. Now, if you're coming from the other route, maybe Ryoto is more useful from that because you can just automatically anchor him to somebody who is ace bonus. And I'll talk about that a little bit more after the route merge, about what Ryoto's utility with this could be when he's pre-trained. And so that's, again, maybe one of the worst indictments of Ryoto is that he's better pre-trained, because training him is not going to be easy. Again, the low will is always going to be a problem for him, because he's just not going to be able to get kills easily. So yeah, he has gain and he can gain experience quickly, but it's just all that. And again, his skill list is always going to be a thorn in your side, because again, you're going to have to deal with the hit and run situation. And just, I realize as I'm talking here that I've been talking for so long about all these things with Ryoto, but again, it's because he has the potential. He has the potential to be an outstanding best unit in the game, but there's just so many things going against him. So, I'm going to be using Ryoto quite a bit here and there, mostly as a soul bot, and that's about it. And he's probably not going to be around much other than if I have the extra deployment slots. And luckily for him, on Ryusei route, you have as many deployment slots as you have characters, so Ryoto is going to be used and will be at least a good soul bot user to help you deal big damage. And beyond that, Ryoto is also just going to be another guy that can at least be able to sit in a mech and deal some damage. I personally think maybe investing in him isn't the best choice, but also you could maybe unlock one of the best characters in the game for helping out one of the other best characters in the game by providing that help from Gain, from Zeal, and from Soul. Is he the best Soul user in the game? To finish off this final thought, no, but he is a Soul user in the game, and in my opinion, that at the very least makes him rise up the tier list and is definitely a pilot that you should heavily consider to be one of your main pilots throughout your playthrough. And following up talking about Ryoto, we might as well talk about his ride, the Lion Type F. The Lion is interesting for mechs that we're acquiring here on Ryusei route, in that it is a mech that is exclusive to Ryusei route. So once the route merge happens, if you are from Ryusei route, you have this Lion Type F. If you're from Kyosuke route, you don't get the Lion Type F. Is that a big deal? No. The Lion Type F is a solid mech. It's a little bit better than a Gespent, but it only does some things better than a Gespent, and certainly its weaponry is nowhere near as good. But we'll get into the overall feeling of the Lion in just a second as well. Starting out with the Lion's base stats, these aren't actually its technical base stats, but no matter what, it will come with 2 upgrades to all of its stats as well as all of its weapons. So this is the stats that the Lion comes with at base, even though they are slightly upgraded. Now, the one minor thing about that could be that you don't have as much room to grow, but also having those inherent stat buffs is just good, because honestly, you're probably not going to be thinking, oh, I need to invest in the Lion first. So having these upgrades sets the Lion apart and gets it a little bit closer to the mechs that you've already been upgrading, and sets itself apart and makes it into a pretty solid unit to have right now. So going a bit more in depth into its stats, HP stat is pretty good, energy stat is pretty solid as well, and then the mobility stat at 126 is just short of the Wild Broader in the plane mode at 130, so that's really good. And the armor at 1210 is also very good. That's similar to the 009 Huckbind, actually a little bit better, so it'll make it a little bit more tanky, and just again sets itself apart and gets it into a pretty solid niche here, and is going to be better than a lot of the basic generic mechs that you have right now. So that certainly is a plus. Terrain ratings, it's got an S in the air, which is really good, and you're basically always going to have this thing in the air. The A in space will be useful later on in the game, and then for its B and C's on land and in water, you will have to consciously put this mech into that situation. But just looking at the Lion Type F, with its basic specs, it's pretty solid. It's not amazing, and certainly isn't touching anything like the Grungist or the Psybuster, but it's going to be definitely in your top half, or close to it, for mechs you have right now in Ryusei route. Weaponry for the Lion is certainly where its biggest weakness lies. First of all, it has very limited post move, only machine cannon at 1500. That's not going to be dealing a lot of damage, especially the mechs that have shields. It probably won't deal any damage. The homing missile and railgun are both good for having long range, but again are non-post move, so I can certainly set you a little bit behind. Lion is a real robot though, so you can outfit it with different weaponry to make up for this, and so that is one solid part about the Lion, but again, its weaponry is certainly not its strong suit. And that's really where the Lion falls apart in comparison to pretty much every other mech you have. Really, the Lion is only better than like the planes in terms of weaponry, and then its good evasion helps, but beyond that, you're really going to be using the Lion mostly as a nice secondary mech for an evasive unit. For example, with me, it's a great mech for Attune because Attune can use it and use its great evasion, while instead Ingram is in the Wild Rider. Ingram could also be good in the Lion. Ryoto could be good in the Lion. You know, Ryo can be good in it. Even I think Rai could have a really solid time in the Lion as well, but just as the game continues on and you get more and more mechs, the Lion will continue to fall further and further down in terms of a mech you're even thinking about using. And really, again, its only utility is having those base upgrades, having 6 move, having flight, but beyond that, you're going to get mechs that have all of those things plus better weaponry in the near future. So the Lion is good here in Ryusei Route to start, but long term, the Lion will definitely not be a mech you're going to be using throughout the entire game. So now we get a little bit more help with Ryoto joining us. He always deploys at the beginning of turn 2, so you don't have to worry about doing anything specific to get him to join you. As you saw, the units loaded onto the Hagane can launch after it attacks, which is definitely useful. As you saw there as well, I made a little bit of an oopsie there because I wasn't paying attention to which Gesment I was using to take out that mech. I wanted to give it to Aya to give her a gain kill and get her some more experience. Instead, Gyata was in front, so got bamboozled there, and you know, it happens, whatever. Give Gyata another kill, a bit of a wasted experience, but that's not the end of the world. We see here on this player phase that we're getting Attune up and close, and she's using the Wild Rider to the full of its abilities, and she's just really useful with that because she has great evasion. With that focus, she had a 0% chance to get hit and then deals that big damage, so good on her. One other mention for this turn is that, as you can see with Ryoto, and why I mentioned that the Lion not having any good post-move attacks is bad, is because Machine Cannon does not do much damage. That is a pretty weak enemy, and it only did 500. Now, water and all that hurts that. The Lion can really use the Slash Ripper or another post-move ranged attack to just help it deal damage that is actually good when using post-move.
そう騎士なんざお呼びじゃないっての。
おっと、ギリギリセーフだぜ。
もっとちゃんと避けてくれにゃ。
次はこっちの番だ。 いけカロリックミサイルやべえだったら
So good on Daitetsu on that enemy phase for taking care of all those sea lions. That also gets him a lot of will, so now he basically will be a lot harder to take down because his shield will start activating, and he has all that extra defense from the high will that he has now from taking out all those enemies. So again, just good to see your battleship doing that, get some great experience as well. I wanted to take down that specific barrel lion to get Ingram on top of a platform out of the water so that he can use his beam attacks much more successfully in the Schutzwald. I probably should have had Ryo load up onto the Hagane and then get closer into the action because she's just lagging behind, being stuck in the sea and not having any water jet or anything to help her or Excel to help her get into the fray. One other quick note from this turn is that I'm trying to use drill attack from the Gust Lander. You can't do that on flying enemies. It's a pretty rare thing in OG, but some attacks can't attack certain terrain types. Usually even beam attacks still attack, but they just deal no damage to water enemies, but there are some attacks that can attack air enemies when they're more ground-based mechs, like the Gust Lander. So just in general, on this turn, we're just trying to take out all of the smaller, non-big battleship / boss enemies. The Rhinoceros Battleships are going to be a bit of a pain to take out. They have a lot of HP and a lot of defense, so it's going to take some time to knock them down. Kind of save them for later and gang up on them with all of your units once you have gotten a bunch of will from taking out all the barrel lions and the rest of the enemies that you encountered to start out this map.
てめえの出番はここで終わりだ。これでジエンドだ。ソニックブレイカー。戦う相手を間違っているぞ。まだ終わりではない。おお、なかなかやるじゃねえか。おめえアートラーのジジイに何されたんだ。
ラクターには当たらない。相対距離、速度、再計算。チャージ完了。撃つ。
まあてめえは所詮失敗作だったってことだ。調整をやり直せってな。
So now that we've taken down all of those barrel lines, it's now time to take down these rhinoceroses. Just do it as slowly and safely as possible. Of course, you do have that time limit to worry about, but once you get rid of these rhinoceroses, as long as you attack with pretty much all of your units, you should be able to take them down in 1 to 2 turns, so shouldn't be that hard. And then after that, focus your attention on taking down the bosses. Make sure again you save up your SP for fighting the bosses, as well as for helping get as much experience and money out of the bosses if you plan to take them down on this scenario, which you most definitely should, because it's not too difficult.
勝てねえぜ。ゲームでも実戦でもな。こいつでフィニッシュだ。ソニックブレイカー、ほら試し
どうした天山、俺はここだぜ。さっきので終わりじゃねえぞ。サークルザブラ
そろそろうざくなってきたな。やっちまうか。
So Tenzan, despite giving us a bit of a scare, actually makes it easier for us to take him down by going after Ryusei. So just make sure that in the future though, have Ryusei have a persist already on lock, so then he's not likely to get one shot by Tenzan, you know, getting all angry and going into a gamer rage. So now I've got and Ryoto paired up, and Ryoto is going to be using Soul to help us get the most amount of damage out of right now, and we're going to use that to take down Tenzan, and Tenzan is in for a rude awakening when we hit him with this Soul attack.
そう好きにはやらせないってよ。帝都星と羅合星のコンボ受けてもらうぜ。ここでゲームオーバーかよ。
So now, after taking down the last Rhino, it's time for Thomas and his lucky hour to once again be on. The plan is to take down Thomas here is to just knock him down low enough so that I can use Mosky and Rio using Cosmonova with the Psybuster, and then Rio's got T-Link Ripper, but combined with her having Valor already, she'll deal decent enough damage. Plan is to get Thomas down into that range, which is actually not as little damage as I initially thought. I thought I needed to use the Tuni and the Hagane to take it down, but actually this attack I do with Ryusei is enough, so a little bit of screwing around. I had to reset a few times, that's why the save is there and the jump cut. So one other useful piece of tech that we've got to help take down bosses, and in general is a very useful spirit, is that Aya, upon one of her level ups, got the use of Attune. Attune allows her to grant any unit bullseye, which is fantastic for Mosky, and in this case right now Rio, without either of them having bullseye, so you can give them that to make sure that they can get past Thomas's lucky BS. One thing I could have done here is Mosky had enough SP to use Lux, so I didn't need to use the SP for my other supporting units. I also could have had Rio use her duo skill training instead to get them more PP on this kill, which definitely could have helped, but at the same time the more important thing is getting this with Cheer as well as Bless. But again, if you want to criticize my gameplay and say you should have used training there, you are most definitely right.
使いやがって
捕まえてみせる。
許せねえ。
ディーリンクリッパー。
こいつでとどめだ。コスモノバ。潮時か。
仕上げ。
So with the defeat of Thomas, that will get us the SR point for this scenario, but we are most certainly not done yet. fight Shu and the Grand Zone if you really want to. It's a fool's errand, especially on a first-time playthrough, but if you somehow have SP regen on some of your best units already, and have a lot of HP, and are able to protect your units and not get them all blown up, you could fight him. It's a fool's errand, and there isn't really a lot of things to help you fight a boss that is this far ahead of you right now, so what you're better off doing is moving the Hagane to the far side of the map and escaping, and that is what we are going to do. We are going to get the hell out of here and end the map, finish off Scenario 16.